I mean, I guess that was my biggest question reading this was I was just, and that kind of answers it. I was waiting for what's the point? You know what I mean? What's the point of the book? What's your hypothesis? What's your thesis? And uh, and that was what I was going to ask when reading this was, are we building to that? Are we going to get to the end of this first chapter and you're going to tell me why I'm reading this book? Because
Hmm.
to be honest, the first few pages, I didn't know what I was reading because I haven't read a lot of Peterson. I haven't read a lot of this stuff. So all of this is new. So are you going to, is that by the end of this chapter going to lay out the rest of the book? And that's kind of my question.
Yeah. So the layout that I imagine is this. Here's in this first section, here's an orientation to the author and here's an orientation to the book. Like we're talking about being disoriented, having a structure of belief, that being destroyed. What next? Well, here's the Jordan Peterson model. It gives us a framework to think about orientation. We have to ask, what is the situation that I'm in? Where do I want to go? And how do I get there? There is no orientation without those three questions. It has to be that way. So then we have to start with what is. And the fundamental question, I've struggled so much to write this out, but I believe it's true. The question that we have to ask is reality good? Is the reality that I've been born into good? Can I trust it? Should I consent to being here? And that's a tough question because a lot of reality is terrible and painful and confusing. But you can't move on unless you decide to trust that this is good. And so then if we trust that this is good, then where can we go from there? So I think maybe the next place that I would go after that is, if the truth is good, then how do we learn about it? And so then I'm going to talk about this idea of maps, which is like the map is not the territory. The territory is what's real. I can talk to you about what's real. I can't put it in the palm of your hand, right? You can experience what's real directly, but you can't even experience the whole thing. And so when I'm talking about it, I definitely can't talk about the whole thing and I can't represent it completely, right? It would be like my dad used to, when I first learned how to drive, I'd get in my car and, I'm going to go to the grocery store to like pick up some milk. Well, he would say, okay, you go down this road and then you go down this road and then it's going to be on your left. So he would draw a map for me with like 3 lines. Well, he's not drawing every blade of grass along the way because it doesn't matter. The map is a symbolic representation of the territory. It's not the territory. And you want it to be as simple as possible. Well, our beliefs about reality are a symbolic representation of reality. And sometimes it's as simple as the maps that my dad drew. And all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, this road is blocked off for construction. I have to go a different direction. My map is not sufficient. I've only got these 3 lines. I need a richer map. I don't need to know everything, but I need to know more than I know. And so then what do we do about that? Well, at the end of the day, our maps are only provisional. Like I can understand enough of reality that I can get to the grocery store and back, but I can't tell you like, the chemical processes supporting the life of the grass on the side of the highway. But I don't need to because I'm just going to the grocery store to get milk. So if we trust in the goodness of reality, then I can also trust that my ability to perceive and represent symbolically and interpret the symbolic representations of others is sufficient for me to do what I need to do. Because here I am, I'm alive, and my dad's alive, and my granddad's alive, and my great-granddad's was alive. Like they made it. So my ability to make maps is sufficient, even though none of my maps is actually completely sufficient. What I mean is, like, all of them will eventually hit a limit where they have to be updated. So what we ultimately need to trust in is not a map, but our map making ability, our ability to perceive and to update. Well, that's the idea called the logos. Aristotle talks about it. Plato talks about it. John talks about it in the Bible. And Aristotle also tells us that our perception's a function of our virtue, meaning I'm able to perceive reality and update my maps better when I practice doing the right thing. That's real. But it's a really interesting relationship that my moral action helps my perception, because in order for meaning is implication for action. So if I'm looking out at the highway and I perceive that the road is blocked, that's meaningful. Like, I don't have to tell you somebody put 13 traffic cones in front of the roadway, and then behind that there was one of these things, and then behind that there was a truck that was working, and they had had sledgehammers and they're breaking the concrete. Like, that's not meaningful, because it doesn't I don't have to act in response to that. What matters is the road is blocked. So the implication for action is that I have to take a detour. So because meaning is implication for action, in order for me to perceiving the truth is accepting the implication for action of the truth. In other words, perceiving the truth comes with an obligation. It comes with responsibility. If I'm going to see what's meaningful, that means I have to understand what I should do about it. If I'm going to perceive that the road is blocked, that is packaged with understanding that I have to take a detour. So if I practice not doing what is right, in other words, if I practice not taking the action that is implied by the reality that I'm perceiving, I distance myself from perceiving reality. So that's the way that perception is a function of virtue. My ability to perceive is related to my commitment to and my practice of doing what is right. It's a package deal, which is really interesting. So here's where we've come. Like, we believe things, they break down. That's terrible. But we know for sure that we can at least hope in the fundamental goodness of reality. If we do that, then we can learn the truth. And in order to learn the truth, we have to be good. So then what does that mean? And that's where the book goes from there. Somewhere in there, the first chapter is going to end.